will be in this annual charity auction. Although I'm going to pull it up just to make sure that I am right about all that. Um, let's see, I put this together the other day. Let's see. So definitely Rolling Realms. First 12 copies of Rolling Realms signed. Definitely Red Rising. Tapestry. Okay, so Secrets and Sororities isn't in it because I'm not the designer of it. I can't sign that one. But yeah, it's Red Rising, Rolling Realms, and the Tapestry expansion. Heck, maybe I'll add Secrets and Sororities to it since that was also a 2021 release. Yeah, so that's coming up next week along with the Rolling Realms pre-order. Just clarified, the name of the game is Old Salt. So yeah, Geekway to the West next week. I recently posted on my personal blog, jamiestegmeyer.com, the top 10 new to me games I'm hoping to play at Geekway to the West. There actually aren't many like 2021 releases on that list because seems to me there haven't been that many 2021 releases. Although I did play one the other day. I played Sonora up when I was in Yosemite. Hey Peter, thanks for joining us. Francesca, thanks for joining us today. So I'm intrigued by really any game at Geekway to the West, but my intent when I go to Geekway is to play a variety of new to me games with a variety of people that typically I don't normally get to play games with. So I'm really excited to do that next week. Fortunately, the convention is fully vaccinated and fully masked, so I get to feel safe while gaming next week and make sure that I am being safe for the people around me. So I'm really looking forward to that. I think they are still accepting attendees for Geekway. And so if you happen to have some time off in the middle of next week and want to come to St. Louis and play some games, maybe a game with me, that would be awesome. Yeah. So Yosemite, I was in Yosemite last week for a wedding of some friends, Megan's brother and sister-in-law, and we had a wonderful time there. I'd never been to Yosemite National Park. It is a massive national park like that's something that was told to me before I went. Like, what was the main sell for Yosemite, and the size and scope of it was the main sell. And I really didn't grasp that until I was actually there, until I was like looking up at a cliff that people can actually climb, like experienced climbers can really climb in movies like Free Solo and Dawn Wall. Seeing the giant sequoia trees. Like, it's one thing to see a photo of a giant tree, but actually to be there and be inside the tree, like I was able to get inside one of these trees. It was that big that it had a hole cut in the middle, was just incredible. And just the size and scope of the park. Every view was just full of grandeur and magnificence. And it was just nice to be out in nature for a few days and hike and cook for people and eat good food. Yeah, it was wonderful. Dexter noted that both of my supervisors are here today. Yeah, here's Biddy in the foreground and then Walter in the background over there. Both are passed out. Yeah. Justin's here from Room 51. He says, what's the craziest thing that a player has done? Of all my bizarre player stories come from Magic players at tournaments, particularly the guy that was singing at me without breaking eye contact whenever it was my turn. That is certainly bizarre, Justin. I attended a few Magic tournaments back in the day, and I can't say anyone sang to me at those Magic tournaments. Although I was surprised at one of those tournaments that someone was writing down every single card played or that he saw for my hand. Like, he took notes on every single play, which I could see him gaining like a very slight advantage from doing that. I'm not sure if it helped all that much overall, but it was interesting to see someone do it. It slowed down the game a bit, but he tried to keep the pace of the game by doing it. What else bizarre has happened? I don't know. It's tough to think of that on the spot. It's a fun question. I mean, one bizarre thing that I did with a friend is in Seafall. We cracked open one of the boxes without looking at what's inside Seafall. It's a legacy game, and we put an eye patch, like a real eye patch, in that box, so that when our friends opened it, they thought that someone had to wear the eye patch. They figured out pretty quickly that it was not a real thing, but it fit thematically so well with the game that we were able to have a little fun with it. It was a little bizarre. I wouldn't say it's like an in-game bizarre behavior. If I think of something, I'll let you know. That's a fun question. And anyone else can answer that too. If you've ever had a truly bizarre thing happen to you, hopefully not something too disturbing, just a little bizarre, just a little wacky, feel free to mention it in the comments below. Another Justin said that he is going to Richmond, which is the area where I grew up. I grew up in Chesterfield, a county just outside Richmond. He said any suggestions on food places and breweries to go would be appreciated. So the number one place that I know, that I think about Richmond, is Gelati Celeste ice cream. I love Gelati Celeste. I think it's the best ice cream in the world, and I'd highly, highly recommend going to Gelati Celeste on your first day, because if you love it, as much as I do, you'll probably want to go back the next day too and try some other flavors. That's my biggest recommendation. Carlos says that he enjoyed my video about my top 12 digital games. Yeah, so last week when I was in Yosemite, 2 videos went live that I recorded before that. One was my top 12 digital games, video games that I played over the course of my life, including some much older games. And then this past weekend, I did my top 8 favorite Reiner Knizia games. That was on this past Sunday. So Carlos says, when you were talking about Breath of the Wild, Zelda Breath of the Wild, and how it inspired you to work on an open world cooperative game, I started thinking about cool ways in which your game could give a nod to the video game series. It's probably very early in your design, but I think it would be awesome in your world if there's a character named Shigeru, a nod to the series creator Shigeru Miyamoto, or Zelda Link, a nod to the main protagonist. Have you given this a thought? I do like to give nods to my inspirations throughout various games. So it is quite possible I will do something like that in my open world game. Yeah, it is one of many inspirations, but it is for this open world game I've been working on for a couple of years now. But yeah, we'll see. And part of it too is sometimes giving nods to certain things can break the immersion of the game, of the world that I'm building. And so I'm kind of careful about that too. I try to balance that a little bit too. Sometimes I might like rearrange the letters in a word or spell something backwards to give it that little nod, but have it fit better into the world of the game. Yeah. Lee says, will Rolling Realms come to Essen Spiel via distributors? So Rolling Realms, the pre-order directly from Stomar Games will be available on October 6th. And we have it in fulfillment centers now. We are ready to start shipping it right after that. We'll probably start shipping it the week after that to champions, and then the week after that to everybody else. All other direct customers. The retail release date will be, it's usually around 2 months later. We'll make it a little bit tighter in this case because we definitely have the games in our fulfillment centers. But for Essen, the only company that will have it is Forland, our German localization partner, and they will only have the German version of the game. Distributors don't get the game, well, I mean, they get the game in advance of the retail release date, but basically, distributors are selling games to retailers, not customers. So distributors isn't the right word here, but retailers cannot sell the game until November 19th, which is after Essen. Chad says, have I played Star Wars Outer Rim? Did you like it? I love the game, and Fantasy Flight Games finally announced an expansion, so I'm stoked. I still haven't played it. I need to play it. It looks like a really cool game. I did get very close to playing what I've heard is a fairly similar game, Firefly the game. So we went to Yosemite. I brought some little games to play along while we were there. I brought Deep Sea Adventure, The Mind, and Okie Dokie, things that I could fit in my suitcase. And then we were in Sacramento for a few days where I got to see one of our shareholders, meet one of our shareholders for the first time, Ryan. We played disc golf. We went to a game store. We had lunch. And at the game store, we bought some bigger games that we didn't have to cart home, basically, or that I didn't have to cart there or cart home. And we bought Sonora and we bought Firefly. I learned both of those games and played Sonora, and I learned Firefly and set it up to play, but it just didn't fit into our schedule to actually play it. So I came super close to actually playing Firefly the game, but didn't actually get to it, which is a little unfortunate. I posted this on Instagram today, actually, because Firefly the game includes 13 unique decks, all of which need to be randomized. So setup is quite a beast for Firefly. It took I said an hour on that day, but it probably took only an hour because I was also learning the game while I was setting it up or reiterating the rules to myself. But setup for that game probably takes maybe 30 minutes, 20 to 30 minutes. It's not an easy game to set up. But I'm curious if Star Wars Outer Rim streamlines that a bit. I know it's not even based on Firefly, but I've heard the comparisons between the two. Stan says, how many national parks have you visited? Stan says his wife and him have been to 16 of the 63 so far. We've not been to Yosemite yet. You know, I haven't done a full count, Stan. I'll have to look through my copy of Parks and figure out which ones I have or haven't been to. I found out recently that the St. Louis Arch is actually a national park, considerably smaller than Yosemite, but it is a national park. So I've been to that one because I'm here in St. Louis. And I've been to other ones. I would say my favorite so far that I've been to is Bryce Canyon. Not to take anything away from any of the other national parks, and a favorite maybe isn't even the right word, but the most beautiful moment I've had at a national park was at Bryce Canyon. It's a stunningly beautiful place, especially at sunrise or sunset. Peter says, I'm looking for a new office chair and having a really hard time finding a good one. How is the one behind you and what make is it? What is the name of my chair? Let me look it up, Peter, while I'm talking here. I will say that it is a pretty good chair. and I think it was fairly affordable. I think it was around $100. Let's see. I'll pull it up where I bought it. Okay, so it is the Duramont Ergonomic Adjustable Office Chair with a lumbar support and rollerblade wheels. And I would say it is pretty good. I'm happy with it. I'm still having kind of back and neck issues. I don't think it's related to the chair so much as the exact position I've chosen for the chair. I'm still trying to figure that out. But I will say that the very lower back, the lumbar support itself, is basically a big plastic piece that can push towards your back or away from your back, and you can adjust that. But when it pushes towards my back, even though it helps lumbar support a little bit, it also hurts because it's hard plastic and there's no padding. And so I don't know if you can see it in the video here. Yeah, you can see it. There is a Relax Support brand, Relax Support pad that I bought that I also use on the chair now. That seems to be helping with that, with the how hard that plastic lumbar support is. So yeah, I'd recommend it, and I think it was fairly affordable. How much did I pay for this thing? It was, I guess it was a little more expensive than I thought. It was around $300. I think I got it on sale. I don't think I paid that much for it. But I sit in this chair. Honestly, I have a hard time paying that much for a chair. Even as I say that, I'm like, wow, I paid $300 for a chair. But just like a bed, I am sitting in that chair, unless I'm standing right now. It's a sit-stand desk. I'm sitting in that chair probably 10 hours a day while I work. And so it's one of those things that I should just get over the money and just buy the best chair that will work. I think the risk with the chair, though, is that you don't get a chair that actually is comfortable. And then you've paid, what, $300, $500 on a chair that doesn't help, isn't comfortable, doesn't help your neck pain like I have. So that's, I think, the part of the risk. Let's see. George is dropping by just to say hi. Giovanni says that he hopes I have fun at Geekway. Oh yeah, George mentions that Dusty at the Mill. Dusty was able to come to Design Day recently, Stomar Games Design Day, and we took a few minutes at Design Day to have a little chat. And so for the first time I appeared, maybe not the first time I appeared live with Dusty, like sharing the same camera. On his channel this past weekend, I believe is when he posted that video. So there's a nice chat about Design Day and other Stomar Games things, kind of live or filmed live in St. Louis at Design Day on the Mill channel on YouTube very recently. Briss says, was I at Gen Con? No, I was not at Gen Con, but my coworker, Director of Sales Alex Schmidt, was there, just having meetings at Gen Con. I'm going to do an article soon about conventions, both virtual and online. I'm still kind of gathering my thoughts, but part of it stems from my surprise that 35,000 people showed up at Gen Con. That's a lot more than I thought would show up at a convention at this time, but I heard people were pretty good about wearing masks, or really good about wearing masks. I don't know their vaccination rate, but I think I saw something like maybe a 90% number thrown out there. I don't know if that's accurate, but yeah, just surprised that many people showed up. That's a lot of people to show up in a couple different big rooms at this time, in my opinion. I'll keep going with questions for now. I do have some other topics about Yosemite and Geekway, a chat that I had recently, but I'll jump around to them in a minute. Tim says that a store called Your Brother's Bookstore has its grand opening in Evansville this Friday. They sell board games, but mentioned that their distributors are out of stock at Stomar Games. I'd love to get your help. Get your games there in stock if possible. Thanks, Tim, for asking that. Yeah, I mean, we have an open invitation to retailers to contact us at any time if they can't get our games from distributors. It is possible that they're just out of stock everywhere. You can see on our website right now that we have some things that are out of stock, but they will be coming back in stock fairly soon. But Tim, I think you have my email address. Just have them reach out to me, or we'll do the work here. I will, if they have a website open that has their contact information, we will take care of that. I will, we'll reach out to the IC, them in Evansville here. We'll take care of that. We'll reach out to them and make sure that they can stock some of our games. But that is a general rule of thumb for anyone watching this. If you have a treasured local game store and you're surprised that they don't have our games, and the reason that they say is they can't get it from distributors, all they have to do, it's really, really easy. All they have to do is reach out to us, send an email to me or Alex at Stomar Games, and we will help them. We really, really are there and want to be there for retailers who can't get our games from distributors. This isn't a knock on distributors at all. Sometimes distributors simply don't have our games in stock because we don't have them in stock. But oftentimes they do have them in stock, or they're selling to different channels, or they have reasons to sell to other sellers. yeah, just reach out to us. We want to help with that. Hans says, how do you become a shareholder in Stomar Games? Is it public? It's not public, no. We are an S Corp, which means that, so that's a US, a United States legal definition of a company, wherein people can essentially apply to be shareholders if that's how this specific S corp works, and that's how our S corp works. People can contact me and say, hey, this is why I'm excited about Stomar Games. This is not what I can offer, but this is who I am. We like to know a little bit about the person who's talking to us. And based on U.S. law, they must be a U.S. citizen and they must be an individual. So like corporations cannot invest in Stomar Games. And so someone can come to us and say, hey, we are interested in investing, becoming a shareholder. If you're a U.S. citizen and you're an individual, and give us a little bit of information, and then I'll give them some information about our company and our valuation. And we can explore that possibility. I would say it is, we have a limited number of shares. So when someone buys shares in Stomar Games, they are buying from an existing shareholder. Usually me, because I'm the majority shareholder, but any of our shareholders are able to sell their shares. Yeah, that's a rough idea of how it works. But if you're really interested and you meet those brief requirements, feel free to email me at any time at jamie@stomargames.com. Let's see. Dexter says, any idea for when the double-sided mats for Wingspan will be back in stock? Next week, actually. Yeah, so we are finally getting all these shipments that have taken a long time to get to us, and for various products, for both Wingspan expansions, for Wingspan, for the double-sided player mats, for the Rise of Fenris, for Tuscany, all of this stuff will be back in stock next week when we launch the Rolling Realms pre-order. So you'll be able to put a lot of stuff in your pre-order, save on shipping, if you have reprints that you want, and if you want Rolling Realms. That'll all be next week. Kim pointed out that it's not actually my chair anyway, and that Kim has a great point there, that technically this is Biddy's chair that he lets me sit in sometimes. Wayne recommends Herman Miller chairs. Briss says, I can't wait for the Wingspan nesting box. If I don't own the game, would I be able to get everything for Wingspan once the big box is available? It's hard for me to guarantee that because we make a certain number of games and then we don't know how fast they'll sell through our web store. But our hope is generally to always have our products in stock. We strive for that. We don't always achieve it because weird things happen where freight shipping takes longer than normal, production takes longer than normal. But our hope, certainly, when we have the Wingspan nesting box come out, is that you will also be able to buy in that same order Wingspan expansions, Wingspan accessories, everything that you want for Wingspan. That is our hope, so you can save on shipping, because notably, this is a very big box. It will take a big shipping container to ship it in, or a big box to ship it in, so it arrives at your house safely. So shipping will not be cheap on it, and so it will be wise for you to add other things to that order so that you save shipping on everything. Yeah. Cynthia says, what was your favorite hike in Yosemite? Cynthia is from MeepleSource, and Cynthia was talking last week with me about her favorite hikes in Yosemite. Cynthia, feel free to post yours in your comments below. So the hikes that we did, what was my favorite hike? So the hardest hike we did, the longest one, was up, what I've been saying is Yosemite Falls. I may be saying that wrong, but it eventually ended up near Nevada Falls. It was a very well-populated hike, and it was a very good hike. It was rough. Good and rough. The first half of it was pretty much smooth and paved. They were ready for it to be a hike taken by a lot of people. And then there started to be some steps, and then more steps, and it got very, very steep on the way up to Nevada Falls. We got up to a view of Nevada Falls, but not on top of Nevada Falls. We ended at Little Yosemite Valley, which is kind of between the falls and between the Half Dome, one of the big climbing places, hikes at Yosemite. So that was a good one. I would say that was maybe a little bit longer than my preferred hike. That one was around 11, 12 miles, I think. I really enjoyed the Mariposa Grove, which is actually a little bit of a shorter hike than I would normally go on. Is not a particularly long hike. That's where all the sequoias are. But we ended up splitting off and doing an additional part of it near, I keep calling them the siblings, but it's not actually the siblings. It's the faithful couple. They're two trees that branch off into two big trunks that was a beautiful hike. Also, the Sentinel hike was incredible. We took Taft and then went over to Sentinel, and Sentinel is basically a big domed rock in the middle of Yosemite, or feels like in the middle of Yosemite, and it has a full panorama view of the entire, of what feels like the entire park. I'm sure it's just a small part of it, but it's an amazing panorama view from up there. It's a moderate hike. Um, and then actually, what am I? Well, I'm naming a lot of things here, Cynthia. But another hike that I would recommend there is that I enjoy was we took us a few smaller hikes. One of those smaller hikes took us into kind of the not the campground, but an area with like shops and stores in Yosemite, and it took us by some falls, and it also nearby that was a hike that took us um, up to El Capitan and the Dawn Wall, which is a big climbing wall, a giant climbing wall at Yosemite. And that hike is a short hike; it's not a long hike, but the payoff at the end is still incredible. Just to be at the face of this massive wall, where you can be right up next to the wall, looking at people that are climbing the wall, and they are still little dots. They're tiny, tiny people on the wall. It's still super hard to see them, even though you are right there. And right across the street from that happens to be a freshwater stream, river, small river, a big stream, and it was great to just dip our feet that had been aching from all these hikes in this water. And so that combination was really nice, going up to the Dawn Wall and then dipping our feet in this little stream. A lot of answers there, but yeah, we had a great time. And one of my highlights at Yosemite, one of the things I'll never forget, was we had a bear encounter multiple times. There was a bear that just apparently hangs out in among the area where we stayed. We had these Airbnb rental houses. We stayed at one of them, and this bear guy is pretty bold. I think, unfortunately, because people are feeding him or her. But the bear came up to our window, our breakfast nook window, once, and then came back twice and three times, and a third time, just to say hi, just to kind of sit and hang out, just to look in the window and almost try to get in the window, which we were careful about. But I've never been that close to a bear and still felt safe about it. Although the idea is that you generally should not feel safe about the bear, so I ended up having to scare the bear away. You're not supposed to have those types of camaraderie with bears at parks because then they become too friendly. But that was definitely a very memorable experience to be that close to a massive creature. Yeah. Stan says he enjoyed Bryce Canyon as his favorite national park by far, and he also really enjoyed Badlands. Nick says, just wanted to say thanks for taking the call last week from my 10-year-old son Landis about his game Ant Kingdoms. We'll definitely check out Shards of Infinity. Yes, that was awesome, Nick, and so bold of your son to make that call. So I was briefly on, I think I was there for like 30 minutes on the Beans and Dice podcast with Carlos and Rob. And they take calls. They take live calls every Thursday on their YouTube channel. It's like a call-in show that they put live on their YouTube channel. And Landis called in while I was also calling in the show. And so we all got to chat with Landis for a few minutes about his game Ant Kingdoms, which Landis described as inspired by Star Realms, but with some unique twist to it. And I recommended to Landis that he also check out Shards of Infinity, which is like Star Realms, but I think has extra level to it that might give Landis some ideas with the mastery mechanism. George says, have you seen Voidfall on Kickstarter? Any opinions? Will you back it? I have seen it. I've kind of usually I try to look at campaigns to learn from them as a producer, as a marketer, and as a gamer, of course. A friend backed it, so I won't be backing Voidfall. A friend's going to get it, but it does look beautiful. The art looks beautiful. The design looks pretty incredible. The playing time is probably a little bit outside my realm. It's probably a play once style game because it does say a maximum of 240 minutes, which if you're counting is 4 hours. Usually my ideal games are around 90 minutes to 2 hours when I'm playing games, but it looks really cool. And Mind Clash does an amazing job of melding theme and mechanisms. I'm going to do a video about that too soon. Like companies and games that do a great job of consistently melding theme and mechanisms, and Mind Clash is definitely one of them. That came up quite a bit when I was polling ambassadors about that. Wayne says that Dragon Con had 42,000 people with 90% showing vaccination status to get their badge and the other 10% showing negative test. That's awesome. That's awesome that, wow, 100% of people showing one or the other. That was really awesome, Wayne. I love that we're seeing like it speaks to my heart of with humanity, of the level of humanity of people saying we really want to get together and have these events, and we're willing to do it safely. We're willing to get vaccinated for it, both for their own safety and the safety of the people around them. We're willing to get vaccinated for it. We're willing to show a negative test, and we're willing to wear masks indoors for a long period of time. We had that happen recently at Stomar Games at our design day, but it was a much smaller event. It was only 75, maybe 80 people at design day. And we saw that, and that was reassuring to me. But I didn't know that these other bigger companies, conventions, would do anything like that. And so it gives me hope. I'll say, it gives me hope, especially within the gaming community and maybe the nerd community. I think Dragon Con extends to the greater nerd and geek community. Chris says, what's your favorite local hiking trail? I went to Wildwood and hiked the Zombie Trail recently. Also looking forward to hiking Salt Lake when the leaves start to turn. We do have a place. Okay. I'm not familiar with the Zombie Trail or Salt Lake, but I have heard of. I've been in Wildwood. I didn't know there was a trail there, but I will make a note of that because Megan and I love local hikes. We took a hike along the river 2 years ago. I forget the name of it, but it was a nice trail. A lot of sun exposure. So I don't know if it would be on my top pick, Wildwood Zombie Trail, but some of my favorite hikes recently in the greater St. Louis area, extending a little bit beyond that, were in Shawnee National Forest in southern Illinois. We took some beautiful hikes there, some stunning hikes, including one called, I think, Little Grand Canyon. And all the hikes took us down into foresty valleys that felt like Rivendell, yeah, from Lord of the Rings. They felt like we had entered this magical place, undisturbed by humanity, even though there were other hikers there. All the hikes were around 3 miles, so they weren't that hard. And they were just beautiful. They were so beautiful in Shawnee National Forest. I have a blog post about it where I named the specific hikes. You can look that up on jamiestegmeyer.com. It's about a 2-hour drive outside St. Louis, but totally worth it for like an overnight stay. Just get an Airbnb in the area or camp if you like camping, and take some of those hikes because they were incredibly beautiful. Yeah. Diego says, will the mechs for Scythe be back in stock anytime soon? And yes, Diego, finally, they are in this shipment that we will have available next week, next Wednesday, when the Rolling Realms pre-order goes live. Yeah. Giovanni says, will the game mats for Wingspan fit into the nesting box? They will. In fact, they'll fit not even curled up, but we've designed the top layer of the box so that those neoprene mats can lay flat. You can lay 5 of those mats flat in the box. And actually, I'm glad you mentioned that because I keep forgetting, but I got a sample just last night for one of the final components that we were testing. So I was trying to get this right, these trays that hold the food and the eggs. Tested lots of different versions of them. And one of the surprises during the testing process was, because originally we were using a solid color tray. We were using this white tray. And what we found was that unless you were sitting like directly on top of the tray looking down at it, it is really difficult to see these food tokens. You wouldn't think it from looking at this. You're like, this is not a particularly shallow or deep tray, but you really cannot see which food is in each of these compartments, which is a problem for gameplay. Like, we tested it. We literally played a game of Wingspan using these trays, and it was a problem. And so instead, we are going to use clear plastic trays where from the side you can see the ankles. I have the top on here, so it's a little harder to see, but you can definitely. Top is pretty secure. That's probably a good thing. So you can see from the side which food tokens are in which compartment. And if you're right on top of it, you can see that as well. And the nice bonus that we added while testing this, because one of the things I did was make the trays less shallow and add a third one, is that we now have 3 trays. So you will have 3 of these trays for eggs, for at least 6 types of food, and again, it adds to the modularity of the box, because in the future, if we add like another food type, if we have some token that we haven't thought of yet, there's extra room for it because we have 3 of these containers now instead of just 2. So that was the final component that we're testing, and yeah, so that means that now really all we'll have to do is wait for the next Wingspan expansion to be ready because of freight shipping right now. Freight shipping makes the side of the nesting, or the Wingspan nesting box, it would basically it would make it so we would have to charge way more than I want to for this box. And so we're going to wait until either freight shipping prices drop a little bit or until we can combine the first print run of the box with the next Wingspan expansion, putting that expansion inside the box. You can also buy the box separately or buy the expansion separately, but a number of copies of the box will have the expansion inside of it. And that will, I think, allow for us to offer a much better price, even if freight shipping is still expensive at that time. It's way more than you asked there, but I wanted to share because I was excited to finally get this final sample and test it to make sure it fits properly inside the box. It looks great, it feels great. I know clear plastic isn't as fun as a color like this, as white, but it works. It needs to be functional. The purpose of this specific tray is to sit on the table during the game. It needs to be functional, and it is. Yeah. Let's see here. Lionel also asked if I backed Voidfall. I mentioned that in a second. I didn't back it, but a friend backed it. Chet says he's finishing up his LOR novels. What's LOR? Do you have any recommendations for novels or short stories that have a similar feel? LOR. I'm sure it's like a series that I should know and have read, but I don't know the acronym. I will say that I am reading right now a book called The Empire's Ruin by Brian Stavely. This is the 5th book in a series, but there's an original trilogy. I forget the name of this trilogy, but there's a trilogy by Brian Stavely. Then there's a standalone book, I think called like Skullsworn, something like that. And then he's also released another standalone book, or at least I think it is. It might be part of a new series called The Empire's Ruin. And I highly recommend it. Brian Stavely is an incredibly talented fantasy writer. And the original trilogy focuses on teams of they're called ketrel. They're basically giant birds, big enough to carry 4 or 5 people, and those people kind of police the world in a way, police this fantasy world. The first book is about how you become one of these people that can ride these birds, and then the story branches out from there and grows quite big. But he keeps getting better as a writer. I mean, he started out as a great writer, but The Empire's Ruin is a masterclass, I think, in character evolution, character depictions. It's really, really good. But I wouldn't start there. I would start with the original trilogy. I would recommend doing that, and then move on to either the other standalone book or The Empire's Ruin by Brian Stavely. So Cynthia is clarifying some things here. She says the big hike that Jamie's talking about is essentially the first half or so of the Half Dome hike. In fact, it's also could be the last half of it. We encountered some people who had been up since like 5:30 that morning who had done Half Dome and were coming down for it in the opposite direction. She says, I've done that a few times before you needed to get a permit to do Half Dome. I love that one. Sentinel Dome is a ton of awesome views for the effort. Mariposa Grove is so unique. Love that. There are some great hikes in the high country too, outside of the valley. You really can't go wrong with Yosemite. I've gone so many times and always see new things. That's awesome. Also, one of the cool things about Yosemite is I think if you go at different seasons, you're going to see a very different version of Yosemite. We went obviously in September and saw the early fall version of it, which was quite beautiful. The weather was beautiful, and it wasn't all that crowded. I've heard if you go in the summer, it gets really crowded. So I would maybe recommend going in the spring or the fall. Tim says, we've noticed there are 6 capital cities while playing our first 5-player game of Tapestry. What made you decide to keep it at 5 players instead of 6, and will you add the 6th player in the future? Does one more player make it too long? And you're exactly right, Tim. I think it does. Originally, my intent was that we would release the 6th player in an expansion at some point. But the more 5-player games of Tapestry I played, the more I realized that even 5 players is maybe pushing the playing time a little bit. And pushing not just the playing time, but also the downtime between turns. And so I don't think the game would be good at 6. I think that you would see a serious downturn at 6 if you did that. That said, it is not impossible for someone to play Tapestry at 6 players. There are enough capital cities, there are enough civilizations. You would just need to use some of your own tokens to do that. But I can't recommend it based on the amount of downtime that would add. Lionel says, will we be at Essen? And no, I hope you have fun, but we will not be at Essen. Stomar Games will not be there. Anderson says, can I talk about the actual status of game production worldwide? Chinese factories are closing again, this time because power crumbs. And the shipping freight continues to be a huge problem. How does this affect industry and specifically Stomar plans? I mean, it doesn't impact our plans. It's just taught us more patience, basically, over the last year, specifically in terms of freight shipping. Production has slowed down a little bit, but not a ton for us. But we know at any time it could slow down quite a bit, and we're just patient. The number one thing I can say, the advantage that we have at Stomar Games that other companies lose when they do this, is that we don't use Kickstarter. We only accept pre-orders for our games after we've actually received them at our fulfillment centers, which means that we are not on a schedule beholden to anyone. We are here to serve you when we actually have our games in stock. And I know other companies are too, even if they use Kickstarter. That definitely is not to bash them. But when you launch a Kickstarter project, or any sort of pre-order where you don't have the product in stock yet, when you haven't finished making it, or if you haven't even started making it yet, there is so much uncertainty that that you're putting risk on the customers instead of putting the risk on yourself, which I get. Companies companies don't need to do it, but I understand why companies do that. But it's so refreshing to me not to be running Kickstarter campaigns at this time of uncertainty because we can control our dates. I was hoping to get Rolling Realms 2 months ago, but we didn't get it. And so we were just patient. We've waited for it to arrive, and now it will have arrived, and we'll be selling you a game that we have in stock rather than a game that has a completely uncertain schedule ahead of it. So that's the big thing, Anderson, that I would keep in mind if you're a gamer, if you are a publisher. Think about the impact of the schedules when you have so much uncertainty regarding freight shipping and for production right now. That's the big takeaway for me at this point. Tim says, last week while playing Nemesis, my friend chose the player 2 must not survive objective, even though he was player 2. Oh, that's pretty clever. That's interesting. I didn't know that could happen in Nemesis, but that does make sense. He thought he won by dying, but we told him he had to choose the other option and survive by that time in the game's victory check. It's certainly hard not to die in Nemesis. We all lost. I played Nemesis twice now. I have not survived a game of Nemesis yet, but I've had fun both times. Dexter says, my PC is super fussy, but Scythe with Automa on Steam is the one I downloaded. It does work on his PC. Is there a Tapestry digital like that? It's coming. Yes, we have a digital developer, Tim Meyer, who is working on the digital version of Tapestry, and I think it will enter alpha or beta testing in 2021 with hopefully a release in early 2022. Yeah, it's coming. We're working on it, or he's working on it. Giovanni says, I know Stomar Games cards are very high quality, but have you considered adding card sleeves to the store or to the nesting box, sort of how the Raiders of the North Sea Collector's box did? That's a good question. My general philosophy about that is that I don't think many of our games actually require sleeves, and I wouldn't even recommend them for most of our games. We put nice linen finish on our cards so that they are protected, so they feel good when you touch them, when you shuffle them, and we are here to support our games with replacement parts. So generally, I would not recommend sleeving our cards. The only exception to that is games where you are shuffling cards a lot. And yes, this is my personal opinion, but it also carries over to how I think about sleeves. And also, I'll mention one other personal philosophy there, or business philosophy there. Basically, the idea is if we ever make a game where you are required to shuffle a lot, often and a lot, over the course of each individual game, then we will almost definitely offer a sleeved option, whether it's included in the game or included on our web store. But until then, I don't think they're all that necessary unless it's personally important to you. And in that case, carries over to my business philosophy. There are plenty of companies that already make sleeves and they do it well, and I don't want to impede those companies by offering our own sleeves. With the exception being if we have a game where you really need them, where you need those sleeves to have a great experience with the game, like in a deck building game. Tony says, have I watched any episodes of Star Wars Visions on Disney Plus? It's a mixed bag, but some of the episodes really invoke a Hayao Miyazaki feeling. I've not watched any of them yet, Tony. We're still watching What If on Disney Plus. But I'd love your recommendations. If you have any specific episodes in there, I don't know if we'll watch the whole thing, but if you have any specific episodes that you'd highly recommend, let me know, and I'm happy to check those out. I love Star Wars. I just generally don't watch much animated stuff, but I have loved What If, the Marvel's What If series, even though it is animated. I don't even really, once I'm into it, I don't think of it as animated. Javorko says, greetings from Serbia. We received Wingspan in Serbian, and we're very happy about that. Now we can enjoy Serbian bird names by playing this wonderful game. That's awesome. And we're very appreciative that we even have a partner in Serbia to bring that version of Wingspan to you. Brenda says, in the wake of the issues with Broken Token, do you have a recommended insert for Scythe or other games? Um, yeah. Do we have so? Do we have a recommendation? I don't know if I would recommend one company over any other in terms of inserts. I've heard good things about Folded Space. Um, I'll have to yield to the comments here for anyone because I don't think I don't have a custom insert for Scythe. But yeah, if anyone has recommendations about inserts that they recommend for Scythe or other games, feel free to post in the comments below. We do not have any products through Broken Token. Broken Token once had a third-party accessory agreement, as we do with anyone who makes like accessories for our games. We have an agreement that they sign that says that we won't that we will be ethical about the way that we make our products and the way we sell our products, the way we treat our employees, and also in reference to Stomar Games, we won't pretend that this is a Stomar Games product, basically. And due to some violations there with Broken Token, they are no longer allowed to make or sell third-party accessories for Stomar Games. Yeah. Chris says, do I have any thoughts about Asmodee being put on the auction block? So the news here is that Asmodee, which has been bought and sold over the years by various investment firms, is now the firm that owns it wants to sell it. And someone actually posted on the Stomar Games Facebook page that we should put together a $2 billion Kickstarter and buy Asmodee ourselves. But we're not going to do that. But it was a fun idea. I know it was just a joke. I don't know. It's such an odd company in the space at this point that yeah, I don't know what's going to happen. I think my main thought is I hope whatever happens that Asmodee and the companies they own can continue to serve gamers in the best way they can. And I think there's some ways that they maybe haven't served gamers as best as they can over the last couple of years because of some of those profit-driven elements that come when you become a company that exists to be bought and sold by other companies. I still think they do some good things for customers and many good things for customers. But I hope they keep that in mind. I hope whichever company buys them and the people who remain at Asmodee, I hope they're able to become and stay as customer focused as possible. Because companies like Stomar Games and Asmodee exist because of people like you that buy our games and hopefully have joy when playing our games. Tim's watching Midnight Mass and Squid Game on Netflix and Foundation on Apple TV. We're excited to get into Foundation. I actually just added Squid Game to my Netflix feed. It looks weird, but maybe good. And we just finished watching The Chair on Netflix, which we enjoyed. We're also finishing up Ted Lasso, season 2. I think there's maybe 1 or 2 episodes left. And we're also, as I said, enjoying What If. Another book that I am reading recently is On the Plane to Yosemite, to California. I tried a book on tape. I've never, I think, listened to a book on tape on a plane before, but it was a nice experiment to try. And through many of you recommended this book, I got World War Z, which is a really, really well-produced audiobook. It's told through the perspectives. It's basically a zombie apocalypse story told through the perspectives of a lot of different people worldwide. And they got really famous actors and voice actors to read each of the different chapters. And I got about maybe a third of the way through on the flight there, listening to it at 1.4 times speed, which is the perfect speed for me. I'm glad I can adjust the speed on Audible, and I really enjoyed it. All of you, I appreciate anyone who recommended that because it's a really, really well put together audiobook, and it's nice that I can consume it in little chunks, almost like little short stories along the way. Let's see. Carlos says Star Wars Visions episodes are really short and they were released at the same time, so it might be worth checking out all of them. I'll have to do that then. Yeah, thank you. Let me see if I'm going to probably focus on questions for the rest of the time. Let me see if I have anything else I need to focus on. Some games I played recently. I mentioned Sonora and Okie Dokie. I also played, or actually, I don't think I mentioned Okie Dokie, but I enjoyed it. I also played Deep Sea Adventure and played Selenia, all of which I enjoyed all 4 of those games. I also had a great chat the other day with the Tavern panel. There will be a digital tavern or digital festival, online festival, and I was part of a conversation about alcohol in board games. I also had a great chat yesterday with developer and designer Ira Fay, who recently worked on Iridia with Cody Miller. And we had a great chat about combat systems in games that will be live on my YouTube channel in a week and a half. Anything else here? Yeah, I think those are all the topics that I wanted to cover today. I'm happy to, of course, answer questions, and I see some questions in the comments below, so I'll finish with those questions today. Oh, I haven't done chocolate of the day. Chocolate of the day will be, oh, we got, well, we stocked up on groceries at Yosemite. I still have some left over. I was able to carry home some Trader Joe's chocolate covered coffee beans. So that'll be my chocolate of the day today. Michael says Secret Cabal was recently discussing publisher attendance at conventions and whether it was worth it. And Michael, yeah, you're going to say something here, but yeah, I listened to the same podcast yesterday during my daily workout. They pointed out that Stomar Games chooses not to attend and instead uses social media to its advantage. Was that a conscious decision on your part, or is that something that evolved over time? A little bit of both. I never went into the board game business with a convention strategy in mind. It just they mentioned in that podcast that I'm an introvert, which is true. But I wouldn't let that get in the way of what's best for the company if I thought a convention strategy was worth it. I just I think that I can connect with people in the way that you connect with people at conventions, using social media, like what we're doing right now. I'm talking to you. I'm reading your question. I'm learning about you. The only thing missing is face-to-face connections, but I can also see your faces, and you can see mine. I can see your little thumbnails here. So there are many ways, and this is just one of the ways that I try to connect with the Stomar Games community and the greater community of gamers. And so I guess from the early on, I saw ways that I could do that without attending conventions, because conventions are time consuming, they're expensive, they can be a bit exhausting, and I think they're reaching just a pretty small audience of people. That it's an important audience, but there are tens of millions of gamers and even more potential gamers in the world, and a very small percentage of the people attend conventions. That said, one thing that didn't come up in that conversation on the Secret Cabal is that I do love attending Geek Week to the West, just with a very different motivation. I attend Geek Week to the West both to connect with people and also to learn games and play a bunch of games in a short amount of time, so I can learn from them as a designer and have some content to share on my YouTube channel. And so the types of conventions that are fairly convenient for where I'm located or wherever any publisher is located, and that are just the type of conventions where I can go and play games for a couple days with people, that is very appealing to me, and I really actually enjoy that element of conventions. So conventions as gatherings, I'm really excited about that, and I wonder if we've seen a lot of that happen over the last few years, like smaller, very focused conventions. I see them a lot on our play and win spreadsheet. They're like 200, 300 people, of people just gathering to play games for a couple days. I think that's awesome. That's the style of convention I really enjoy. I don't know if I entirely answered the question there, but that's my general thinking about it. There's some other stuff on our website that you can find about my thinking about conventions and how we moved away from Gen Con, but we were also helped by MeepleSource. MeepleSource goes to Gen Con, has a big booth at Gen Con most years, not this year, but most years, and they are willing to sell our products at Gen Con for those who want to get them at that place. So another thing is we want to reach customers in a variety of different ways. Different people want to buy our games in different ways, and one of those ways is conventions. It's very small and related to the greater whole, but one of those ways is conventions, and so we still want to be there to serve those people in some way. Gerald says, would you have to give a game designer a small royalty for an expansion created by another designer? Would you have to give a game designer a small royalty for an expansion? I may be misunderstanding the question, but if I'm working with a designer, or if a designer is, actually, I'll give an example here. The viticulture expansion is not designed by me. It's designed by some other designers, and they're absolutely getting a royalty for it because they worked on it, and they will get paid for their work on that expansion. So yeah, absolutely. But I might be misunderstanding that question a little bit. Tim says he's interested in a third-party tapestry organizer. So yeah, if any of you have great companies to recommend that make organizers for games, feel free to post in the comments below. Tony recommends Star Wars Visions Episode 1 and Episode 4. Episode 1 and 4. Thank you, Tony, for those recommendations. Yeah, so Episode 1 and 4 for Visions. My friend Mira is chiming in. All the best. Hope all is well. I hope you and Jeff are doing well as well, Mira. Tim says, thoughts on Azul Queen's Garden? He's excited about that and the new crew game. I'm excited to try both of them. I love Summer Pavilion so much that I don't know if another Azul game will ever eclipse that. But I'm curious about it. I definitely want to play it at least once. And I'm curious about the new crew as well. I really like what the original crew did, and I'm curious about the spin-off, the sequel. And Tim says, speaking of about alcohol in games, he picked up the Belgian beers race at Gen Con. They had an actual beer bottle artist do the art for the game. That's really cool. That's awesome. Tony says, I know you backed Dog Park, as did Tony, and it looks fantastic. However, there seems to be a daily stretch goal post from the publisher. At what point would you think stretch goals stop becoming useful to start becoming things that should have been in the game anyway? I mean, that's the case with Kickstarter for the most part, that stretch goals are often things that you've left out of the game or you've, in a calculated way, to form a marketing strategy. That's just what they are. They're a marketing strategy. Any of those things could be included in the game from the beginning. The general idea is economies of scale, that if you make enough of something that you can afford to put more of something in. But at the margins on Kickstarter generally, you could really afford to put anything in that game from the very beginning. That's a generalization there, but I typically find that to be true with Kickstarter prices and the margins that you get from them. So Tony, I mean that's the case with every stretch goal. I would say as a consumer now, as a backer, I rarely pay attention to stretch goals. They are not a huge motivating factor for me. The biggest motivating factor for me is the game itself, if I'm interested in the game, the company, and the various elements of the project itself, like the art, the graphic design, how everything comes together in a package to form value as it relates to the core reward price and sometimes the deluxe price, although oftentimes that is so much more expensive than the core reward that I don't even consider it. So I'm really looking for value for that core price correlated as it relates to the value that I'm getting from the game, not the stretch goals. Yeah, they rarely even look at that part of the page anymore. Zach says, do I have a list of games that were released announced at Gen Con that you are hoping to eventually play? You know, I don't have such a list, Zach. Is there a handy list available of all the games that were released at Gen Con? It's I pay attention to generally. I'm the most aware of what games are released through what reviewers are talking about, and I haven't seen reviewers talk about a lot of games from Gen Con yet. So, I don't have a great comprehensive list of that, but if there is one out there, I'd love to check it out. Paul says, I think the question about royalty payments is, does designer A get a cut if designer B creates an expansion without the input of A? I don't know if that happens, Paul. Like even this expansion for viticulture, I'm the publisher. I was the original designer of viticulture. I was heavily involved in the development of the expansion, even though I wasn't the designer. So I don't know if there's a scenario where any expansion is designed in a bubble. The one thing that maybe you're hinting at is if someone designed and tried to publish an expansion for viticulture without any involvement of Stomar Games at all, and that would just be a problem. That would be a copyright violation and a trademark violation if someone did that. So they definitely would not get it. Like, that would be a legal issue there, not an issue of are we paying this person or not. That's if they do it completely independent. If we just saw on Amazon an expansion for viticulture showed up on Amazon that we never even heard of before, that would just be a problem. I don't know if that's what you're saying either, but if it is, yeah, any company is going to have a problem with that. And Mark is clarifying it well. He says, I think the commission question is, if Mary designs the game and John designs an expansion, does Mary get, I see what you're saying. Does Mary get royalties on John's expansion? Let's see if that is the case. So it's a little weird with Stomar Games because I design viticulture, but I don't get royalties from our games. I would say yes. Like if Elizabeth ever said, she wanted to take a break and wanted another designer to design an expansion for Wingspan. Elizabeth gets royalties for everything under the Wingspan brand. And so every unit sold of a Wingspan thing, like she gets royalties for the Wingspan neoprene mat, even though she didn't design the neoprene mat. She will get royalties for the Wingspan nesting box, even though she didn't design the nesting box, because it is a Wingspan product. And so, yes, I would say definitely Elizabeth, in this case, Elizabeth would get a royalty if she wanted someone else to design an expansion for Wingspan. But even part of that is that even then, Elizabeth would be involved in that expansion in some way as a developer. So either way, she's going to be involved a little bit in it. So yeah, Gerald clarified that in his comment below. Sorry about misunderstanding that. Yeah. Chris says usually BGG has a list of new releases at Gen Con. I agree. I was looking for that the other day, but I couldn't find one. But I'll poke around. If anyone can find one and post it in the comments here in the next minute or so, that would be awesome. Otherwise, thank you all for joining me today. These were great questions. Sorry about misunderstanding that last question, but hopefully I've clarified that now. I will post this video on YouTube as I usually do. Tim, I will get in touch with your brother's bookstore about having a direct channel for them to buy games from us if we have them in stock. And good luck to Peter for finding the desk chair. These were great questions today, great conversation. And if you have anything to follow up on, any questions, any comments, go to YouTube and do that in about 20 minutes because that's where I will actually see notifications for comments moving forward. All right, have a great Wednesday, and I will see you next week for a big announcement, all the big announcements, Rolling Realms, our charity auction. Those are the two things, but they're giant. They're big for us. They're big, one-time only or annual things that we're doing next Wednesday here live on Facebook. All right, take care. Bye.